Hi, I'm Andy McNair, application engineer for Pentair Hypro, and today we're at my friend Josh's farm to take a look at his planter, and we're going to do a pump install to upgrade his liquid fertilizer system. So let's go in and take a look. Josh, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at a Case IH 1255 24-row 30-inch planter.
Okay, and you've got a liquid system on there already?
Yes, I have a liquid system that I put in for a lawn, usually somewhere between 5 and 7 gallons an acre.
Well, let's go get a closer look and take a look at what pump's currently on there. All right, well, it looks like you've got an older Hypro D115 diaphragm pump on there, hydraulically driven with the adapter kit on there. So that's it's been a good solid pump. How long have you owned it?
I have had this planter for 3 seasons so far.
Okay. And how has it been as far as operation and dependability?
It has operated pretty well. I have had in-season breakdowns with it where I have had to torn diaphragms and had to replace them. And I also have yearly maintenance of changing the oil, which requires taking the pump off and disassembling it.
And I mean, that's just annual maintenance, the change in the oil portion of it. That the diaphragm failure that you had, tell me more about that. I mean, did you have to have the machine down for a while, or what was involved?
Yeah, so it took about a half a day time. The diaphragms tore on there, and I had to take the pump all apart and take it out, take it off the machine, take it all apart, and put new diaphragms in it.
Okay.
Also, it was contaminating itself with liquid fertilizer.
Sure.
And that cost me time while I was planting.
Yeah, once those diaphragms go, whatever you're pumping, infiltrates the oil in the crankcase, and if you don't notice right away, that fertilizer can take out the bearings in your pump and can have even larger problems. So it's a good thing you caught it when you did, and I know it cost you a half a day of downtime, but it's good that you found it and got the diaphragms replaced. But yeah, a fair amount of work there to pull the pump all the way out and replace those diaphragms. So yeah, good thing you got it when you did. So you're looking for something that's a little less maintenance and easier to work with?
Yeah, a little less maintenance, easier to work with. I also notice when I'm running it, my pressures are always, they never seem to run very smooth on my pressure gauge.
Oh, okay.
I seem to have the consistent results of getting the right product out, but it's always pulsing on my pressure gauge.
Sure. And I mean, those pulsations, I mean, that's just an inherent part of the diaphragm pump design. So when those diaphragms go up and down inside of the pump, that does produce pressure fluctuations in the output. So that's just inherent with the diaphragm pumps in general. So with what we're going to talk about today, upgrading to our Cobalt Centrifugal pump, you're not going to get those fluctuations. It'll operate just like a centrifugal, where you've got consistent linear output for your fertilizer. So it should be a good upgrade.
All right, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. Well, let's get to work.
All right,
so to start this pump upgrade, I'm first going to disconnect the water or the fertilizer hoses on both sides of the pump. I'm also going to disconnect the hydraulic lines on the hydraulic motor that drives the pump, and we'll have to unbolt it from this bracket before we can look at how the new Cobalt pump is going to fit into that space. So let's get started. Well, I got both hoses off, so now I'm just taking the 4 mounting bolts off that secure the pump base onto the machine. And I'm just going to repeat on the other side with those last 2 mounting bolts. All right, now I'm just going to take out the 2 hydraulic motor mounting bolts that mount the pump and motor to this plate. And then we should be able to disconnect the hydraulic lines and take out the pump. All right, just took off the hydraulic motor. And let's remove the pump. So here's the D115 diaphragm pump that we removed. And as you can see, it's a little bit shorter than the new self-priming Cobalt pump that we're going to install. But overall, there are similar dimensions. So I've already test fit this up on the bracket, and it looks like we may need to reorient the pump, which is not a big deal. We've got a fair amount of real estate under the tank, so that'll be it'll be able to fit in there relatively easily. So when we were talking with Josh earlier, he was talking about the maintenance he did on his diaphragm pump with the blown diaphragm, and really the first indication he had where he needed to repair his pump was this oil sight glass, and that had actually turned a milky color. And that milky color indicated that the fertilizer he was pumping had infiltrated or contaminated the oil in the crankcase of the pump. And so that was his first indicator that he needed to replace the diaphragm and his pump needed service. Now with the Cobalt pump, there's really no maintenance that needs to be done. The only thing that needs to occur is after 1,000 hours, you take out this small plug, you change the wet seal chamber fluid, and you replace it with new. Minimal maintenance, very little downtime, and very little cost to the customer. So that's why Josh was initially interested in this pump, was that it requires almost no upkeep, very minimal cost and labor involved. And after 1,000 hours, that typically equates to 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons, depending on how often or how much you use your planter. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Cobalt design and technology itself. So if you're familiar with centrifugal pumps, this operates a lot like a centrifugal pump. It produces a consistent output. There's no pulsations in the output flow, but the ports are in different locations than a standard single-stage centrifugal. So on the Cobalt, the inlet's actually facing up, and the outlet is at the end of this stainless steel tube that houses 6 small 4-inch impellers inside of that stainless steel shell. And what that does is it allows you to build higher pressure, which would be more comparable to a diaphragm pump. So with those 6 impeller stages inside of this stainless steel housing and 1 priming stage to allow it to be self-priming, you can generate up to 200 psi and almost 50 gallons a minute. So it gives you a performance that's going to be very similar to Josh's old diaphragm pump, and it's going to give you a very linear output, unlike a single-stage centrifugal pump that if you operate it too slow, the output starts to wander. This pump can run from very low rates to very high rates and still produce that linear output. So I just wanted to show a few features of the Cobalt self-priming pump that we're updating to against the diaphragm pump that we took out of there before we start on the installation. So let's see if it fits. So I drilled a couple holes. We had to make some new holes in the mounting plate from Josh's previous pump. And I got the new self-priming Cobalt mounted in position. But you can see it does extend off of the previous mounting plate a little bit. So we're going to take a piece of angle iron and just make a small, simple support bracket, and then bolt that to the existing mounting plate where the pump used to be mounted. So I'm going to take a few minutes, cut some angle iron, and get a support bracket underneath the outlet. All right, so I got a piece of angle iron cut, and we've got that mounted to the existing holes that were in the pump mounting plate. And I've got the bracket coming all the way out under the mounting bracket that comes on the self-priming Cobalt pump. And you'll notice I did put some shims in there just to make sure that everything is flat and aligned. You don't want the pump to be deflected or angled too far away to stress the pump. And so now we'll go ahead and hook up the outlet port fittings and then the inlet port fittings as well. So I'm going to grab some Hypro universal flange clamps with our self-aligning gaskets and get those fittings installed. Now, I will note that you don't want to over tighten the universal flange clamps. All you really need to do is make sure that the faces touch, and that's plenty of torque to keep them sealed and to allow them to function properly. I also want to mention on the outlet of this pump, I've got an elbow, mainly to just make sure the hose routes nicely back to the rest of the manifold on the machine. If you don't have your pump mounted below the tank like you do here on Josh's equipment, you'll want to keep that outlet elbow pointed upwards, and that allows the self-priming technology to function properly. But in this case, we've got positive head pressure from the tank pushing into the pump, and he's not going to utilize the self-priming technology yet. However, in the future, if he wants to add saddle tanks on his machine, the self-priming technology within the Cobalt pump will be able to pull that fertilizer all the way from those saddle tanks back to the row units on the machine. So I'm going to get the outlet port hooked up, and then I'm going to install another hose barb elbow on the inlet and get the inlet hooked up as well. All right, I just had to orient that hose a little bit, and I'll finish tightening the clamp. All right, I just reoriented that hose barb just a little bit. I saw a little bit of a kink in the hose down here, so I rotated that hose barb just so it's got a smooth bend going into the outlet plumbing. Now let's go over to the other side of the machine and hook up the hydraulics. So now I'm going to remove the plastic shipping plugs and get the hydraulic lines hooked up. I've got a couple of adapter fittings that I picked up from the local implement, and I'll get those installed first and then connect the hoses. One thing you'll notice when you're hooking things up, this motor is a reverse rotation hydraulic motor from Pentair Hypro. And so you'll notice that the ports are clearly marked, the pressure side and then the tank or return side. So just make sure you hook up your lines correctly. All right, I think we've got everything installed, so we're good to go, and Josh should be ready to fire up the planter. So if anything should ever get sucked into the Cobalt pump, if there's not a strainer on the piece of equipment, this planter has a big strainer on the other side of the machine, so I'm not too worried about debris or anything getting sucked into the Cobalt. But if anything ever does come into the inlet, to service it, you simply remove these 4 bolts, and then the outlet port fitting comes off, and the entire impeller stack comes out on one unitized shaft. So those 6 impellers that I mentioned earlier, along with the priming stage, that all comes out, and you can install a new impeller stack to service the pump, just in case anything ever got damaged, or maybe you didn't winterize properly and something cracked. But it's easy to service, probably takes, a half hour at the most by the time you take that all apart, put in the new stack, and retorque everything properly. But just something to keep in mind, and once again, trying to aim for designing products that are simple, easy to service, and provide long life in the field. All right, well, we got the pump install all complete. It all went pretty smoothly. Overall, I think it took us less than an hour, even considering we had to make this bracket to support the end of the pump. So pretty smooth. Thought it went quite well, actually.
Yeah, it sure looks good. Didn't take you very long at all.
I did have to drill a couple more holes in your mounting plate to mount that pump base on the other side, but otherwise it fit in pretty well.
Yeah, it looks nice. Looks like it was made to fit in there.
You have any questions about your new pump or anything about it?
What is going to be my seasonal maintenance or anything that I have to do compared to my last pump?
Sure. So you'll still go through your normal winterization. You're going to want to run our RV antifreeze through it just like you did with your old pump, and make sure that nothing's going to freeze over winter. But otherwise, the only other maintenance item is changing that seal chamber after 1,000 hours. So really, it's going to be a few years before you'll need to do any maintenance to this pump.
Okay, sounds good. I'm looking forward to using it, Andy.
Yeah, well, whenever it dries out around here and you can actually get your planter out in the field, you'll have to give us some feedback, and we'll follow up with you, see how you like it.
That sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Andy.
Yep. Well, our pump upgrade and install is complete, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more information, go to our website at pentair.com/Cobalt Pump.